but keen to bring in Bob Trojan as well, if Bob's on the line, to just sort of wrap things up really, and what we've heard today and sort of the key takeaways, I suppose. So yeah, it'd be good to hear from you first.
Great. Thank you, Harriet. And wow, what a great bunch of panels. I mean, this was a very deep and rich conversation, and I'm delighted to be here. And so, what brings me here is that, like Camilla, I am a Sherpa of the ABAC APFF data ecosystem work stream. And, I also have an advisory firm that works on cross-border data sharing issues around the world. And so, what spoke to me today from our conversation, our discussion, really was, from the very beginning, when Kobsak-san said really the most important word, and that is trust. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about how to build trust. And really, it's very important to do it from a whole economy approach. And that there's really three components, three parallel paths here that we're talking about trust. And that is the technical side of things, where the standards can happen, the operational infrastructure, where we spoke about like the scalable onboarding, and then finally the regulatory and legal infrastructure. And we didn't even. I was surprised. No one said GDPR today, and so we've got these kind of baked in governmental data privacy laws that are kind of the yin and the yang of innovation, but safety. And so I think Camilla also at the very beginning, kind of drew the roadmap, kind of connected the dots, which was we have data and we know who has the data. Generally, those are the payments people. So data connects to payments, payments connects to trade, and then finally trade creates prosperity. And nowhere is that greater than on the SMEs who are really driving the economies. And we heard from a number of the speakers today about how within economies, specific economies like India, how their work really fosters innovation in SMEs. And we heard from Nelixa, who really, I think, tied it all together. What this is, what is open data, and just like Kopsak-san said, trust. Her big word that I really spoke to me was transformation. And so, what are we transforming from and to? So, we're transforming from data in many different places that is not shareable, that is not trustable, and using that so that it is trustable and it is shareable, and creating enablement and empower and innovation through competition and sustainable development and financial inclusion. And that stuff is worth fighting for. Now, the various panels, we talked about in the first panel, AML, CFT, anti-money laundering, and one of the data points that really speaks to me that we didn't hear today was how much money laundering does anti-money laundering catch? And the answer is sadly very little. In fact, it's about 1%. So that means that 99% of money laundering is successful. And so that means that we have really quite a long way to go to do proper anti-money laundering. And so we need standards there and trustable data to share. We need trustworthy AI. And Dion said, and full disclosure, Dion and I work on that topic together, and have just published with the ADBI on trustable AI and how that can be used for regulatory and reg tech and supervisory technology. And what my work group has been working on the last year or so was touched on in the first panel, which is data and privacy enhancing technologies. And that's the how do we do all this in a safe, shareable way? And those privacy enhancing technologies really are the key, one of the keys to doing that. The problem with data enhancing, privacy enhancing technology is that they're expensive and they're hard. Um, and so regulatory complexity needs to be simplified was another topic I heard, another point I heard. And I really want to give Holly full credit on pointing out what she called kind of those boring trade agreements. And I'm really excited about an upcoming boring trade agreement that has just been kicked off by ASEAN, which is the DIFA, Digital Economy Framework, which was just kicked off earlier late last year. And I'm really excited about what they could do there that could really help what we've talked about here. So the second panel, really what I took from there was that we've been talking about financial data. You got open banking, which becomes open finance. And the difference between those two is the non-financial data and the connecting of those two, kind of the identifiers with the metadata, the data about the data about the people. And that, the asymmetry of data we have out there is really what's part of the problem, is that, the big, powerful forces have the data, and the small, not so powerful ones need it. And that asymmetry is what's causing the part of the problem. And then another word I heard a lot of, which I really believe in, is really the opposite of centralized, and that's federated. And the federation of data, the federation of tamper-proof data, the federation of these single sources of truth, I think really, is where we're going to end up. And the debate about the roles of the private sector versus the public sector really came through a lot in people's comments today. And I think where hopefully we end is that we'll be private sector led and public sector supported, as I think you might have said, Harry. It was enable but don't prescribe. That's kind of the way to do it. Trust yet verify kind of thing. And principles based regulation as opposed to detailed specifics. And then finally at the end, I heard, how do we reduce friction? The friction that we have, particularly in the anti-money laundering and the CFT, the friction doesn't work. So how, so we have a lot of opportunity to not mess things up really bad by reducing the friction, because the friction causing stuff stinks. So the big opportunity is here, and growing open finance, going towards open finance, not open banking. And I really appreciated the Indian perspective about where do you find this data? The tax people have the data. And so, that's where, if you look at, the places that had like the original kind of, digital ID and such, all of that was paid for by the taxing people. And so I think that's masterful, to really, kind of use data judo of, using the government data to really get to the smart, scalable, federated, trustable data. And then the final thing I heard was that this is a slow journey. And so, the bottom line is this, what we're all talking about here today, is important. It's hard. It's complex. I mean, we're talking about AI. We're talking about RegTech, talking about supervisory technology. We're talking about federated stuff across borders. But I also heard that it's worth it. The SMEs are driving the economy. And what we talked about here today will really, I think, give those SMEs the environment to help succeed, particularly on a cross-border perspective. So that's why I got out of it. So thank you to all the panels and Harriet for your moderation. It was really an awesome discussion.
Thanks, Bob. And yeah, thank you for just so eloquently summing up your thoughts of the panels today. That's really helpful, especially for me because I was talking so much. So getting your summary was great. And I think I agree with a lot of the things you said. And one of the things I feel like the hypothesis we started with, we're very definitely onto something here. Like there is real scope for open data frameworks to help in this space. They're definitely not going to solve this problem and the frictions of cross-border trade, but there's real potential there if these frameworks are designed in sort of that foundational enabling way with that flexibility to sort of to help reduce the friction that we see today.